Welcome to this video. This will be about the second round of Tata Steel 2013. And as yesterday's video for round 1 had some good feedback regarding the format, that I covered all games quickly, I'll keep it this way for now, unless I get some really outstanding game that I think merits deeper coverage. So I'll go through all games quickly, relatively quickly. I had a 1-hour video yesterday, and I expect something similar with this one. So let's start. I'll start with what game? Let's start with Wang Hao against Peter Lecco. And we get a Queen's Indian defense. Wang Hao plays mostly d4, but he's also an e4 player. We have here a d4 opening, and Lecco has long abandoned the Grunfeld and switched to Nimzo Queen's Indian structures. And in fact, we have this popular variation with g3 and bishop a6. Here, unfortunately, Wang Hao played b3. It's not a bad move, but it is the most solid move, probably, together with queen a4. Here's a very exciting gambit line with queen c2, c5, d5, and black wins a pawn on d5, which can lead to a very tactical play, but unfortunately he didn't go for that. I also think this is probably diffused by now and not so dangerous for black, but just judging from the frequency with white playing b3 nowadays, maybe queen c2 isn't so dangerous anymore. So we got this check on b4 to misplace the d2 bishop, not the queen, the bishop. The bishop rather would be on b2, so this check is useful for black. And now black sets up this typical pawn wall in the center to oppose this bishop. So c6, d5 to make the g2 bishop passive for the moment. And we continue with pretty much normal moves. Here white has a rather wide choice of plans. He could try for e4 with the move knight c3, which incidentally would let c4 hang, but it is still interesting. He went for a4, which is also an interesting plan in this position, trying to push a5 and make this bishop look bad. a5, this was the idea, and now black needed to capture on b6 with the queen. As we see, we have this pawns in the center and a huge tension here with all those capturing possibilities. And the main feature is also this setup. So white goes off this c-file. Of course, the huge danger of this kind of setup is that simply everything gets traded down, and we see that in the game we had lots of exchanges in the center, and what's left? This pawn on c4, it's safely blockaded, and the only slight issue that black has, he's got this somewhat weirdly placed queen, but we see that black manages to simplify further, and here he doesn't have anything to fear. Rook c7 keeps everything protected, and now this basically fizzles out to a draw without much happening. Yeah, black has this counterplay on d3, and he even temporarily wins a pawn, but it's a pin, and this at the end leads to a repetition Black cannot really do anything against this. Let's say rook d1, and if he tries to keep the knight, let's say he goes here, then this will lead to trouble. Where do you go now? This knight doesn't have a square. If you protect this passively, then rook a2 simply wins the knight. It doesn't have any squares. Everything's nicely covered. So black cannot really play for win, and after rook d1 knight before, it was in this pendulum over and over again, so a draw here. Yeah, pretty uneventful game, but this is rather typical sometimes of those Queen's Indian Catalan setups where this huge tension is built up in the center and everything gets traded down if both players play in an exact manner. Okay, so next game is Lamy against Kayakin. We have also Queen's Indian start, but we transpose into to a Nimzo setup. And black plays d5 here. This is interesting. This way we transpose to the first round game of, let me think, this was Sokolov against Wang Hao. I'm trying to remember this. I knew Sokolov was white, and I think it was against Wang Hao. I'm not 100% sure, really. Maybe let me look this up quickly. This almost, yes, it was Sokolov Wang Hao, and in this game Sokolov played the immediate a7, his recommendation from the book. But here we get the old continuation, very well known back from the 70s. The only thing which was really irritating was black played queen e7, which looks rather normal to prepare knight d7 and connecting the rooks. Also possible knight e4 is prepared. d5 is hanging for the moment, so it's not possible next move or something, but it's the general idea to plant the knight on e4. What was really curious was now white played b5, and here black can play all kinds of moves, mostly taking. But here he played the very weird move queen back to d8, which is a novelty. Not much of a surprise that this move is new. It looks very weird, just putting the queen back on d8. The idea is, after taking on b5, that you get this square back for the bishop on e7, and this is actually what happened. So black secures his bishop. It seems playable. It's only very weird to undevelop the queen. In the game we get sort of a standard structure where white always is a little bit better, but it's not much really. Those pawns look weak, but black has possibilities to go for c5 and get some dynamism going. And white doesn't have such an easy way to progress here. An idea would be the move e4 to prepare this to also get to the c6 weakness, but it's also not so easy to get this going. Knight e4, as mentioned, is an idea. We see a5 and c5, and in this position, actually a6, c4, in this position white has a very weird move as it at his disposal, which is really a kind of a computer move. He played queen b5, which is the human move, I would say, covering the a6 pawn. The computer suggests this strange move with the following consequences. Knight takes, cannot take with the king, of course. Then you have this check, and then white will take next move on b7 and has an extra pawn with a great position. So this is not possible, but oops, sorry, takes. Check. But knight takes, and what now? Now white just plays queen b5, and it's similar to the game, but white has just sacrificed this bishop beforehand. Now if black would secure the bishop with bishop c8, there's knight d5 coming, and after queen d6, knight b4, we have a very strange position where white has a couple of pawns for his piece. He's got 2 pawns. This is weak though, and he's got this very strong pawn on a6. Very interesting position and very hard to assess. The computer likes it for white, but I'm not so sure. It's certainly tricky. It's no wonder that white didn't play that. He just played queen b5, especially since this continuation. He also could have taken here instantly, but queen a3 is a bit of an annoyance with knight e4 and rook c8 coming, and black gets counterplay. But look at the structure. White was certainly hoping that those 2 pawns, which are weakness, both pawns are, might give him a little bit to play for, but black is just too active. He's got the c-file, and this is really the point. Knight e4 is an active move, trying to use the temporary the activity that black is having at the moment, trying to take use of this. And it still looks like a little bit of something, but black the whole game plays a very active and good defense. We see exactly this. Black sacrifices the b6 pawn and goes for activity against those points. It's very difficult for white to keep check. His check. Yeah, to keep his pawns. Black is very active. If white would he played this move, white would take now here. Black gets this back and has 2 pawns attacked, and this is no good at all. Note that white's pieces are off on the queen side, and black has got this counterplay going. Maybe there was some more exact way to go for white, but I believe that this should be enough for a draw, as black is so active, and as mentioned, those pieces don't really play. And check. It check. Fizzled out to nothing. Check. Really. Yeah, rook f2, and we exchange even more, and it's not much happening at all. Okay, those games weren't so exciting, admittedly. Let's go now for Caruana against Hari Krishna. Hari Krishna, winner of round 1 against Giri, so it's curious to see how he fares with the black pieces against Caruana, and Caruana plays e4, and we got a Berlin defense of the Spanish. This was to be expected. Hari Krishna is an expert on this opening, so Caruana pretty much could expect to get this position when he went 1e4. And what has he prepared against the Berlin? Yeah, this slow d3 move, which nowadays is probably close to becoming the main line, because white is simply tired to play this endgame, the Berlin Wall endgame. Okay, bishop c5, the most active way to play for black. You could also play with g6 and bishop e7, but bishop c5 is the most active move. c3, castles, and d6. Black now protects the pawn. White, the move before, could take the pawn, but it's rather risky. Okay, so what do we have here? Yeah, the typical slow Ruy Lopez Spanish opening with c3 and d3, where the whole game flows in a very slow manner. It's kind of a maneuvering game. In in this game, however, white relatively quickly took on c6 to my at least slight surprise. Usually white still tries to keep this bishop on the board and yeah, play with more pieces simply to keep the position more complicated. Black certainly has good chances to equalize here. If you compare this, black is setting up his pieces in exactly the same manner as in the Italian game, the Gioco Piano, but white has got bishop b5 a4 instead of bishop c4 to b3, which is the usual way to go in the Gioco Piano, where black already equalizes rather comfortably, and here white lost time with the bishop, so it cannot be really much. Okay, but Caruana took on c6 and continued in this way. Yeah, if you look at this kind of position for white, you know that the Berlin defense is a real headache for white players. If you aim for this kind of position, it must be a sorry state in the other lines, as white certainly doesn't have much, to put it mildly. Yeah, black even goes for d5, activating in the center. He could have also played slow moves, of course. Bishop e3, bishop f8. Yeah, and this is curious now. Knight 3 to d2, and now black played the really weird looking move knight to h5. And at first I couldn't really figure out what the idea of this move is. And it's frankly it's a very simple idea. Black simply wants to play d4 and win this bishop. It doesn't have a square. Knight h5 just took the g5 square under control. So if white would play a nothing move, let's say a3, black goes d4, attacks the bishop, and it has nowhere to go. So knight h5 yeah, just poses a very crude threat here. And the fun thing is, white's reaction was was h3, attacking this bishop. And what did black play now? I think this is really funny. Black simply took on h3, because this idea is still valid. After capturing d4, black got the piece back, but he sacrificed on h3 to prevent this capture on g4, which would have attacked the knight. This is why he couldn't play d4 immediately. Maybe I put it on the board quickly. d4, white could take here, here, and here, and he has got an extra pawn at the end with a clearly better position. So this is why he just took and then played d4 to win this bishop. Really funny. Okay, black got the piece back, and now we have a rather unconventional position. White has got these pawns in the center which control quite a good number of squares. It's not necessarily clear that those pawns are weak. I don't think they're really weak at all, as they fulfill important functions. But white has a bit of an airy king side, but on the other hand has potential ideas on the g file. I think this is about equal. It's dynamic equality, though. It's not like a draw or something. It's quite an interesting fighting position. Yeah, black intensifies the pressure on d3. White needs to advance to keep this pawn. Yeah, intending to activate the bishop. And white decides to exchange the knight. Yeah, the king looks a bit silly on g3, but it's not in real danger. Yeah, c5 surprised me a bit, but you will see the idea soon. Black wanted to provoke this move to go here and open up the position at the end. Yeah, this position, to be honest, looks to be, to me at least, looks good for black, but it's not easy at all to show something concrete. White now covered this. If he would have taken on f5, then there's the strong move e4, and this knight doesn't really know where to go. It only has this square, and this looks rather sorry after taking here. Black is yeah, clearly better here. This is why he covered. And now black intends to play f4. Maybe around here he had something better. It's really clear that black is in the driver's seat, but it's not very evident how to improve. At least when I did my very quick analysis before starting the video, I didn't see anything together with the engine. Yeah, it looks nice, this setup, but how do you really make progress in the game? White tried to get some counterplay going, and black decided to take it off. And this is probably now just around equal. There's not much going on. Maybe there was something for black, but it wasn't totally easy. And this still looks good. I mean, but probably it's nothing serious. Black's king isn't exactly safe. Also, yeah. If you look at these kind of ideas with lots of checks coming, and we are close
Check.
to a draw. I think
Check.
they played
Check.
a couple of checks and
check, 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 check.
yeah, it's this kind of position where both kings are so open against the queens that some sort of perpetual will end the game. It's only a question which side will give this perpetual. And here black was the side with all the checks. So a good fight, but still a draw at the end. Maybe black had something somewhere, but it wasn't like the computer was just giving win after win, and it was easy to improve. It's just an optically good position for black, but hard to tell how he could win possibly. Okay, so now let's go to the real star game of the round. At least on paper, Aronian against Carlsen, the two top seeds in the tournament. Naturally, as Carlsen is world number 1 and Aronian is world number 3. Just a couple of points short of Kramnik, who overtook him in the latest list. So what opening do we get? A Grunfeld probably? No, Carlsen actually goes for the King's Indian. And this opening he really plays very rarely, but he plays any opening, it seems. So we have this h3 line, which Aronian already played in the first round. And interestingly, Magnus now goes with knight c6. And I happened to play this h3 line myself, and knight c6 I always regarded as yeah, to be honest, just a nonsense move. I'm not quite sure what to make of this. Let's see what happens. White just played d5, and now Carlsen played knight to b4, and yeah, still I'm not impressed. I'm not quite sure what the idea of all this is. Black loses time with this knight, and he probably has to move it again, and it's not clear that the moves that white is making in the meantime are useless, not at all. Like bishop e2, e6, yeah, attacking the center, maybe a rook e8 also coming, and we have this move, knight d2. Yeah, this was important. If white would play a move like castles, then there is this possibility. White cannot take with the c-pawn as e4 was hanging, like this. And therefore he would need to take here. And then black setup makes a little bit of sense, at least. Can try to relocate the knight, and this piece is nicely positioned on the e-file. This is why white played knight d2, to allow a recapture with the c-pawn if black would take. He played a5 though, to at least support this knight when it goes back to a6. Yeah, b6, sort of improving the structure, it seems. But I still don't see why this isn't simply a bad position for black. White has the space advantage, a3, b4 coming, and I'm pretty sure that Aronian was happy with this position, but Carlsen wasn't. It's pretty clear, I think. Yeah, king h8, this prepares knight g8. We see in the game what the point of this. a3, it was kicked back, and queen c2. White is preparing further action on the queen side. Yeah, now black actually closed the position. Yeah, probably in order to get at least a bit of play, you need to play e5 and f5 later. The problem is, in the long run, white will play rook b1 and b4. Rook b1, knight g8, b4. And this would have happened also if black wouldn't have played e5. And this is the whole problem of black setup. This really stranded knight on a6. This knight is just a terrible piece. White has the space advantage on the queen side, and he's got quite a number of ideas to break through here, connected with c5 or with the move knight to b5. We see that in the game, after f5, Aronian played the interesting move knight b5. Around here, I think there's also maybe room for improvement. White has quite a good choice of lines. This was a tempting move though, and it's in fact a piece sacrifice. If you look at this, black could play f4 here, and what would white answer? This bishop doesn't have a square, but he's got the very strong move bishop takes b6, sacrificing the bishop. Yeah, and this leads to complete disaster for black. The mate threat on f7, so black needs to cover the square on f7, and then c5, and the combination of this pawn duo, knight c4, and this terrible piece on a6, yeah, I think this is close to winning for white. Black has absolutely no counterplay, and those pawns will probably decide the game in the center and on the queen side. So f4 was, I think, a big mistake. So Carlsen avoided that, and he played bishop to h6, which was another point of this g8 maneuver with the knight to prepare bishop to h6. But we see that after taking on f5 and f4, which is the typical maneuver, black's king has got some problems with his cover. The bishop on g7 is often a problem piece in the King's Indian. It is structurally the bad bishop, but it's also the bishop that covers the king. And if the bishops are exchanged and white opens up with f4, then the king on g7 can feel a drought of defenders. And still, black has got this miserable piece on a6. I think white is much better in this position. This is also confirmed by the computer, of course. But when I looked at this, I never, together with the engine, managed to get something really big going from white. I think it's quite amazing. Carlsen somehow manages to keep this position. He keeps he holds it together in a way that white doesn't have a simple win. At least I I didn't see any, and the engine also didn't. It really looks terribly shaky for black, but
check,
just look at this. I mean, you've got an a6 knight, an h6 knight, the bad king. It looks terrible, but how does white win really?
check,
This doesn't look too bad, if you ask me, but maybe it's simply not enough. But yeah, there has to be something. But I didn't have the time to look at this very deeply. It looks really bad for black, but how to punish him?
check,
This is what Aronian came up with,
check,
which is not bad. I mean, white still is better. What is this knight doing? But maybe it's just enough counterplay. Yeah, the knight is at least attacking this pawn, and therefore the rook needs to cover it. Again, you would think that knight e6 is
check,
great for white, but he simply ignores this. The knight a6 covers c7. Yeah, it's better for white all the time, but somehow maybe it's not a win. I don't know. Here g4 was played. I just was thinking about b5. What about b5? Okay, so what if I take here? King takes.
check,
Yeah, this looks rather good for white. He can on king d4 he can try to break through here. This is too quick really. Maybe b5 here. Of course we are down. There's not much time left, but Aronian still had 20 minutes on his clock. He didn't have a huge time pressure. This is curious. g4 is not a bad move. Don't get me wrong, but this looks good with the idea of rook takes f5. Is black able to play something else? I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe this was the point where white could cash in on his advantage. Yeah, he played g4 as mentioned, and now black
check,
yeah, still worse, but maybe it's holding. Oops, no, this was too much.
check,
Yeah, white played knight f4 and now tried to use the g pawn. And c6 now. We see that black is successful in liquidating more and more pawns. Yeah, and now it's over, I think, in terms of an advantage.
check,
d5 is just hanging, and this is the last try, threatening rook h6 checkmate. But black has the funny move,
check,
rook to e3, and here they agree to draw because this rook sacrifice just clarifies the position.
check,
And black gets the last pawn with the draw. Yeah, maybe a somewhat lucky escape for Carlsen. I mean, this b5 move looks really strong in this position. And the whole kind of setup that he played was very dubious. I mean, this is the kind of ideal picture for white in a King's Indian, where this knight on, oops, I keep making this mistake, where this a6 knight is stranded and often a victim for white's play on the queen side. Only when he opened to the king side and weakened his king, white's attention shifted to this side, and it was a very shaky game for black. Okay, so next one is what? Let's do Giri against Anand. Giri playing e4. Usually he plays d4. This is the main move, but he tries to vary a bit with e4 now and then. And yeah, Anand plays various openings against e4, but the classical, yeah, the normal Spanish, the Rui is one of the lines. Yeah, and he's actually offering a Marshall gambit here, which is declined with the d3, one of the numerous anti-Marshall systems. Black plays just d6, and now a3. This is an alternative to c3, which is also played, of course. Here black has a number of options. You can play knight a5, similar to the Chigorin line, or you can play what Anand played, knight to b8. This maneuver stemming from the Hungarian player Gyula Breyer from the, I think, 1920s or 30s when he invented this. This has the idea to improve the knight and make the c-pawn mobile later. Okay, let's see what happens. Black managed to exchange the dangerous Rui bishop, and frankly speaking, there's not much going on. I mean, look at this. This is again one of those slow Ruy Lopez setups where white cannot really count on much. The problem is you play e4, and one of those lines, like the Marshall or the Berlin in the example before, is analyzed so much and very much okay for black, that very often the white players try to play those slow setups to get a longer game with more pieces on the board, but it can also easily fizzle out to nothing. We see what happens. a4, queen to b6, all very standard. Yeah, and we also see the clock times. We have 20 moves played, and Anand has spent about 30 minutes for this. He didn't think long, and Giri has spent a little bit more time, but let's see what happens. Now he invested 10 minutes for rook e3, and Anand played very quickly queen to d8, which makes sense. He only wanted to get the rook over to the b file to initiate play there. And now, very very interesting, Giri came up with the amazing move, knight to f5. This was obviously the idea of rook e3, but still it can come as quite of a shock if you didn't really expect the move. Yeah, it's really playable. Black, I mean, he can take the knight, but it's very risky. Arnold actually played b4, but let's check the capture. White would simply retake and attack this knight. So where should it go? Let's say to g7, and then white has the move rook to g3, and now it gets really dangerous. What is black supposed to do now? There are threats of discoveries and also taking on g7 and then move the knight. If black plays, for example, king to h8, just a sample line, then knight e5 wins on the spot, threatening this, and knight f7, so you cannot really evacuate the king. And if you would cover g7, then white has the move queen to f3, threatening f6, and this is also quite dangerous for black. I don't think he really should should take the piece. And Arnold, after some consideration, like 20 minutes, it's cool to see the clock times here, played b4. They're sometimes not 100% accurate, but it's close. Okay, b4, so just ignoring all this, and this is probably the best way to go. White played rook to g3. Of course, now black cannot take it all, but he doesn't need to. He can play just normal moves, ignoring all this, and try to play on the b file. In fact, if you look at this, I wouldn't be surprised if some in-depth analysis would prove that black is better here, because those pieces, they look aggressive, but they are very, very far away from the queen side. And if you are not able to deliver mate here or get something very serious going, then those pieces easily can be misplaced. How would the rook ever come back to the queen side? I mean, this position without queens, of course, if you just take the queens off, then knight takes e7 would be possible. But yeah, just imagine the queens were off, in an endgame, then black is probably just winning, because the rook on g4 is such a ridiculous piece. But in the game, it seems that white has enough activity. Yeah, the queen is nicely placed on d5, and he managed to win this pawn on a6, but it's just temporary. The idea was that black gets to exchange queens now, and this is what I was talking about. Now the rook on g3 is quite a silly piece, but white was very quick in activating it.
Check.
See? He instantly brought it back into play, and even gave away a pawn to do so. But in the meantime, this g4, g5 is really a good setup, an active one, keeping this bishop bad, and a position with white entering on the 7th and attacking those pawns is probably just okay for white. We see what happens. White even can afford to exchange rooks, and even here Arnold himself offered to draw, despite being a pawn up, but it's really a simple draw. King takes, and now white just threatens king e4, getting the pawns back. He needs to play f5. Black
check,
takes, and here white is a pawn down, but there's simply no way for black to make any progress. It's just this, let's say the extra pawn is the e5 pawn, and if this wouldn't be on the board, it would simply make no difference at all. White simply does nothing and stays. Black cannot make any kind of progress. So yet another draw. It was interesting though with knight f5, but I think Vichy was correct in not taking the knight, and maybe had some chances for an advantage, but it wasn't entirely clear probably. Okay, so now we have 2 games left, and both games would yeah, you could do really long videos on, because they're long, they're complicated. But okay, I decided on this quick format. We have the first game, Nakamura against Sokolov. Nakamura playing c4, and Sokolov plays e5. He's a very classical player, using tried and tested opening systems with central play, piece play. So it's quite a logical choice. And Nakamura plays some offbeat line against this. I believe at least this concrete move order is quite unusual. Okay, I think this is a known line, but quite quickly we get a position which is really weird with f3, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think castles on knight e3 would be normal. The way he's playing, I simply think that black is better. very quickly. Bishop h3 probably wants to prevent, but look at this position. Black has quickly been able to exchange the strong bishop, and now he okay, knight f5. Okay, need to of course protect the queen, but black simply has good pieces. Yeah, all pieces are fine, and keeping pressure on the center. And white simply has pawn weaknesses here. He cannot move any of this. The knight is placed in front of the pawns, which is, yeah, according to classical principles, not the greatest way to play, but it's sometimes okay. But all in all black's pieces play, and white's pieces don't really do much. I mean, this just looks bad. He decided to unbalance with an exchange sacrifice on f6, but still, black is certainly much better here. Yeah, and here Sokolov played in an interesting way. He didn't need to do this, but he played knight e7, and the idea is to exchange white's most active and only active piece on e3. This is even worth a pawn in his book. Now the knight gets exchanged. White played c4 now. If white would take here, then there's rook e2, and the knight can be captured this way. In fact, this is even a forced mate already.
Check.
Have a look at something like this.
Check.
And mate in a couple of moves. So this leads to,
check,
after a couple of moves, to this ugly structure. Black still just an exchange up, and
check.
It's really hard to believe that that white would probably hold this position.
Check.
But see what happens. It gets becomes a real fight now. Yeah, black decides to get off the queens. The king wasn't so secure, and okay, this endgame, yeah, should be winning for black, but it's still some work to do. Yeah, white couldn't avoid the exchange, and this is let's just continue a couple of moves. It simply looks like an easy technical win, but maybe it wasn't so easy. At least it gets tricky. It gets tricky. Yeah, this is probably the right idea. Not sure if this was the best way to play this. The idea is, of course, f4. If white would take here, then rook takes a3 is very simple. The a pawn promotes, so white needs to take here, and then black captures on h4 and gets the h pawn. He gets a pass pawn finally. The only issue is, of course, those pawns. White has some counterplay with advancing the pawns, and to be honest, you could analyze this for ages. It's let's advance h4. In this position, if you look at this with the computer, it all looks very clear cut. The computer says, okay, rook g3 and gives a +6 or something. If you continue this line, it leads to a win of those pawns, and this is of course very easy. But the critical line is that black first gets the rook to f3, sort of freezing the pawns, and then he advances with the pawn or comes over with the king. This looks very easy in retrospect, but to see what kind of difficulties black faced after h4 wasn't so easy at all. Believe me, Sokolov is not bad at calculating, and he's certainly not a bad endgame player. This probably also wins, but it gets a bit more tricky. Now white keeps the pawns.
Check.
Yeah, this looks very weird, I know. But let's say black would play this move. Looks good, right? But after this, unfortunately, black needs to resign. You cannot go like this, but h2. This was, I guess, what was planned. But the problem is, after f7, there's this counter threat, getting a queen, and black has nothing better to take here, and it's questionable if this is a win. We see in the game that after some
Check.
shuffling, we get exactly this.
Check.
And this position you can analyze for a long time, and it's very, very tricky. The issue is, if black would get the e-pawn, I think this position is winning. Even this is not trivial at all. If you are a member of ICC, Grandmaster Yarmolinsky did a video series on this endgame. Exactly the endgame without the e-pawn. If you put the e-pawn off the board, just this bishop, just those pieces without the e-pawn, and this is winning for black in most cases. And even this isn't easy at all. Now white has the e-pawn. I just went through this quickly with the engine. It seems that black could win at some point, but
Check.
as it turned out in the game,
Check.
I go through this really quickly. It's
Check.
yeah, for example, here the computer wants to go rook e1, and actually it seems that this wins the e-pawn, but I can give you the computer line just for argument's sake.
Check.
And here it seems that after this, it's a Zugzwang. King h4 is checkmate. If the bishop moves along this diagonal, it's a check, and this is gone. Yeah, this is Zugzwang, and d5 gets lost with the lost position. Yeah, something like this, but it's tricky. Sokolov was down to 5 minutes, and he tried something else.
Check.
And white managed to get the pawn to e7, and this probably is a draw, as the bishop on this diagonal always keeps both pawns covered. But don't I wouldn't bet something dear to my heart on this. It's very difficult to analyze this position with limited time. After a couple of more moves, here a draw was agreed. Nakamura really had to defend from move like 15 or something in this position and hold the draw. Probably Sokolov was winning at more than 1 point in the game, but it wasn't so trivial, at least from my point of view. For a top class player, he certainly will be quite angry with himself. Okay, and now let's go for the last game of this video. This is Van Vele against Hu Yifan. And Van Vele surprisingly plays 1e4. He very rarely does that. He's a d4 player all his life, if I remember correctly. But he surprised with the King's Indian already in the first round. So he's got some tricky things up his sleeve. Hu Yifan goes to the Sicilian now, not the French. She lost with the French the round before. And Van Vele plays knight c3, so interesting preparation. g6. Yeah, this isn't often played actually, but probably not so bad. I think the argument against this move is g4, but okay, it doesn't happen. White simply transposes to an open Sicilian. We get a dragon, and this is a modern way to play this as black. The sharpest continuations, of course, are connected with long castling and h4 moves like these. But Van Velde plays it in a more solid fashion. He plays a4, and we get this. Yeah, this doesn't look so troublesome for black at first sight, but yeah, she needs to be cautious. The a-pawn is a potential weakness, and white is pretty well coordinated against this pawn. Just a couple of moves later, white already looks rather good, I think, with the pressure on the a-pawn, and black doesn't have much really to go in terms of active play. It's a6. Yeah, this is good regrouping.
Check.
The knight is nicely positioned on e3. It still has this knight d5 idea, but it covers c2, so white is quite harmonious here. Queen b5. Yeah, g4, very aggressive. Probably also good. White has a very secure position in the center and on the queen side, and this just puts more pressure on black. And here you only have two choices. You need to allow g5 by white, and then a possible possible knight d5 at a later stage when the knight doesn't control the square, or you must play this move, which is also not really a welcoming decision. If you look at this, d5 is now really weak, and d6 also. So it was a choice between two unwelcoming prospects. Let's look at this just for comparison's sake, and white would advance here. It doesn't look very attractive also. Okay, she played e5, queen back. Yeah, building up the spin, so white steps out of this. Rook c8, queen e2. Yeah, all very logical. Here I think white had a very good alternative, or I think is always meant as my observations together with the computer. Yeah, b4 was good, probably. Just intending b5, using those pieces on the a file, and black doesn't really have a good response. How to prevent this? It's simply not possible. Black would play something like this: b5, rook moves, and then I just take on a6, and it's simply a pawn. Not much else to say. Pawn is a pawn. Yeah, b4 was very strong, but white keeps a pretty big advantage anyway. The way he played it wasn't bad at all. Keep in mind that they both were on about 5 minutes and 8 moves until the time control, so you usually not too bad off if you just sort of keep the position and keep the advantage, and think about some concrete measures later. You sometimes miss things this way, but it's a rather practical way to play. Yeah, white still has an excellent position. For example, he played queen e1 now. You always could think about knight c4. This is an option, but simply the pressure on d6 is strong. Okay, but what he played wasn't bad at all. Yeah, utmost pressure on the d-file. Yeah, this is an example of this famous setup. I struggle again. Lochen or Alekine's gun with the rooks in front of the queen. Yeah, black is simply very passive. Here again, knight c4 was a good move. Hard to see how black would even keep the d6 pawn. It's probably not possible. Yeah. Yeah, white still retains a big advantage. But knight c4 I think was stronger. The fun thing is that after rook a1, here white had multiple possibilities, but rook a1 was a rather unlucky move. And Hu Yifan does a really good job now to exploit this. She played knight d7, intending knight to c5. And the problem is, yeah, what does white do with the b pawn? Especially after rook a1, he's in a fork. If black manages to capture on b3, if white would take d6, need to look at this. Then black can just take and take here, and it gets really shaky. Something like this.
Check.
And black was probably winning the game. So white cannot take on d6. And what is he doing now? You've got knight c5, and you also got knight c5. These kind of ideas, in addition to the b3 weakness. Yeah, at the end he came up with rook e1, knight c5, rook d6. Yeah, and this position, believe it or not, is already very close to a win for black. Got knight e6, d4, knight e6, f4, and most important, you've got the a pawn. White needed to play something else before. Probably in this position, something like knight to d5 with this idea.
Check. Check.
Of course, I just didn't see this. This is a computer line. Very complicated stuff. Probably a draw would have been the correct result, but as it went in the game, black had a huge advantage. Here there are multiple threats. One simple threat is to take on e4. So let's say white, he went here, but let's say white would play a move like h5, then
check.
Black simply takes here.
Check. Check.
And wins the house. It's already an extra pawn, and all those pawns get lost with check. So white needs to retreat the knight probably. And here rook b2. Looking at this sensitive square, threatening knight e4 again. So repetition, but now a4. Black simply pushes the a pawn. And what is white's counterplay? There really is no counterplay. The problem is white cannot move much. If you would move the rook, let's say here, there's simply
check.
This move. You're pinned along the third rank. And you simply cannot move your pieces. It's really a sorry state of white's position. He tried counterplay with the h-pawn, knight d3. In fact, here a3 or g5. G5 probably was the strongest, but okay, knight d3. It's not bad.
Check.
White took rook e3. Here white also had this move, but black can play a3. It's very complicated. Black is better, but it's not 100% clear. He played rook e3, and in fact now Now black could play a3. What she did, c5. Of course, the simple line was rook takes, queen takes, a3, and the pawn promotes. Manveli though played c5, which is much trickier. Black just took this, but what about a2 now? Isn't this just winning? She didn't play that, but isn't this winning? Let's have a look. c6, and this is the cool point about this. Black now promotes. White plays this move, and believe it or not, this is a draw. Black has a complete extra queen here, and it's a draw because the knight is the king's best friend, an old saying, which is certainly true. The knight defends the king admirably. There is no check even for black with two queens, and white is threatening queen e7 with a perpetual. If black would play something like this, then
check.
Queen d7,
check,
and this even mates. So black simply has no way to avoid the draw. Something like this is the mentioned perpetual check. So my guess is that Hu Yifan in this position calculated this, of course, and she saw that this is a draw. But now comes the big point: a2, c6. Here, instead of queening, which is this draw after c7, black can play queen f7, and now white has no way to prevent a1 queen, and this in fact is completely winning. She didn't see this, but with 2 minutes on the clock, no way to blame a human being for not seeing this. So she just instead took off the pawn. Exchange, knight h4, and now white gets the counterplay on g6, and in fact this is a draw.
Check, check, check,
and we have a perpetual just before white is giving the perpetual. So to sum it up, black was thoroughly outplayed here, and then Van Vele really stumbled with starting with c4. c4 still keeps advantage, no doubt about it. But when black was able to get in this knight d7 c5 maneuver, the pendulum swung to whatever. Black was better, and she really should have won the game probably at the end, but it was too difficult with so little time on the clock. So a draw at the end after both sides missed chances. So all 7 games, and we have 7 draws. But I don't think it was uninteresting chess. I mean, people often complain about draws, but the problem is not the draw. The problem is the quick draw, the uneventful draw. Here we really had fights, and some games really should have been decisive, like Sokolov's game or this game, maybe Aronian's game also against Carlsen. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's been quite long, but you got a look at all the games and hope took something out of it. Yeah, thanks, and probably I'll post round 3 tomorrow. Cheers.